During one of these daily cancellation segments last week, we discussed the violent nature of football and other contact sports, a violent nature which had come under intense scrutiny by the media after, as we talked about, Bills defender Damar Hamlin nearly died on the field during a Sunday night football matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, as far as we know, the Hamlin incident may not have had anything to do with football violence. Still, to this point, all we know is that he had a cardiac emergency in the middle of the game. We have not been given any direct evidence that it was actually caused by a collision on the field, though it certainly could have been. Either way, whatever the exact cause, it remains an extremely rare occurrence that anyone has to be taken off the field by an ambulance and brought immediately to the hospital. That's rare. It doesn't happen very often. This in spite of the fact that football is indeed a violent sport. And as I argued during that segment, it should remain a violent sport. Now, it's good to have these kinds of physical, even brutal, full-contact sports, if for no other reason than the fact that they serve as relatively healthy, relatively safe, relatively productive outlets for male aggression. One of the great services that sports like football provide for society is that they give young, aggressive men and boys a way to harness and channel all of that energy. This is one of the central reasons why sports exist to begin with. The violence is not the whole point, but it is part of the point, and it's an important part. Take it away, and these young men will find other outlets for their aggression, outlets which, you will discover, are not nearly so safe or controlled as football. That was my basic point. And it was a point that proved to be very upsetting to people on the internet, especially after our marketing team at Media Matters posted another of their carefully cropped clips of my monologue to Twitter. The full monologue, which fleshes out my point in rather precise detail, went on for, I think, 12 or 13 minutes. But Jason Campbell at Media Matters posted the 75 seconds, which he felt was the most likely to make the pitchfork mob upset, especially when isolated from the full context. And it seems that he made the right choice because his clip garnered nearly 10 million views on Twitter and provoked lots of angry reactions. Before we continue, I think it would be fair for me to, go back and we'll show the part of that monologue that he posted, and then we'll talk about it. Here he is. Let's consider football itself as a sport. Despite any rule changes or updates to the equipment, it is still a fundamentally violent sport. That's true. And that's what it always will be. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not. In fact, it is a good and healthy thing. It is good that football is violent. It should stay violent. It is good to have violent sports. Okay? We should have violent sports. If anything, we should have more of them because a violent sport like football is, among other things, a relatively safe, and relatively productive outlet for male energy and aggression. Okay, there's a reason why many of the media articles being written and freaking out about football are being written by women. Because football is not, no matter what the NFL is trying to do, football is not for women. There might be some women who get into it, but it's not really for women. It's not for you. You don't understand it. You're not meant to understand it. This is actually a man's thing. This is why violent games have existed in every society going back to primitive times. They are a means of channeling and harnessing male aggression. Okay, so I did say that football is a man's sport, which, why did I say that? How could I possibly justify such a statement? Well, because football was invented by men and has been played almost exclusively by men, and the vast majority of its fans are men and have always been men and will always be men. That's why I said that. Does that mean that no woman has ever watched football or been a fan or been involved professionally at some level? No, it just means that football was made by men and mostly for men. This is a statistical and historical reality. It isn't really up for debate, okay? If it interferes with your girl power fantasies, that's your problem, not mine. I don't really care. And apparently it did interfere with lots of people's fantasies, which is why there were many tweets explaining why my statements were terrible and wrong and hurtful and sexist and so on. This continued until the scholars over at the Young Turks got wind of the controversy and decided to devote a lengthy segment responding to and supposedly debunking my claims. The title of this segment on YouTube declares that, quote, TYT demolishes right-wing alpha male Matt Walsh for his most recent sexist rant. Now, this is nothing new. I've been demolished by many a left-wing YouTuber over the years, demolished at least according to the titles they put on their videos. But as we've seen many times in the past, these demolitions usually end up being rather anticlimactic, if I must say. Rarely do they live up to their own hype. Perhaps, though, this Young Turks video will be different. Perhaps my demolition will finally come to fruition. Let's watch and find out.
That is the infamous fascist, misogynist, and other badist Matt Walsh, insisting that football is only for men. And we are about to prove him completely wrong. Who could have seen that take coming? Cenk did. Called it perfectly just yesterday, right here on TYT. Check out this clip.
So now it looks like the right wing is trying to frame it like, oh yeah, I remember when people were real men and they just didn't mind people getting killed on the field. Now the libs want to make this soft so there isn't as many deaths on the field.
Thank God you're wearing a slightly different colored shirt. Otherwise, people could have thought you did that live. But
yeah, no, I knew they were gonna eventually celebrate the fact that the guy almost died, right? And like, oh, it's supposed to be a violent sport, man, yeah. And chicks wouldn't understand nothing about it, huh?
My favorite thing about this dude is that his dumb guy voice is indistinguishable from his regular voice. He's doing an impression of an idiot and yet sounds just like himself. And speaking of sounding like an idiot, he misses the point entirely, of course. If there is a right-wing take on the Damar Hamlin injury, it's that it's not an injury. Cenk, is that how you pronounce it? I honestly don't know how to pronounce his name, is trying to straw man us, but he's hilariously using the wrong straw man. If there was a conservative position on this topic, which there isn't, okay, because it's not a political issue, but if there was, it would be that Hamlin collapsed for reasons wholly unrelated to football. The predominant view among conservative pundits on the internet, from what I've seen, is that I'm much more plugged into that world than he is that this may have had something to do with the vaccine. Whether that's wrong or right, like that's when it comes to the Damar Hamlin thing, that's the thing that most conservatives were talking about. Very few are using this as an occasion to defend violent sports. I am, but I'm not the official spokesman for conservative pundits. And none of us are, as he says, celebrating the fact that the guy almost died. That's not happening anywhere. So, we were promised a demolition, and instead, so far, we've gotten a series of completely arbitrary and irrelevant straw men that bear not even a passing resemblance to any argument that anyone has ever actually made. Not a great start, but let's continue.
This video had two parts, right? So, really three parts. One is not so bad. He's saying, look, it's a societally acceptable way of releasing some of the violent urges that people in society and men in particular have. That's not that wrong, right? But when they celebrate, the second part is celebrating like, oh, violence is a good thing. Yeah, oh yeah, it's great. No, but wait, it doesn't have to be this violent. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I'll just tell you real quick. Between 1900 and 1905, 45 different people died on the football field because it used to be even more violent. They would literally kill each other on the field. And guess what happened? The government stepped in. It was Teddy Roosevelt when he was president and said, I'm not gonna let you kill each other on the field like this. This is insane. You have to make it less violent. And you know what happened after that? It became way more popular because people didn't want to go see a sport and have people murder each other on the field. And so it doesn't mean it's gonna be less popular. It doesn't mean it's gonna be less of a sport or anything along those lines if you don't celebrate people like Damar Hamlin almost dying on the field.
Oh, okay, I get it. So this is, I see what's happening here. This is the exact opposite of a demolition. Actually, he agrees with my argument, but is trying to find a way to disagree with it. He concedes my point about football being a healthy outlet for male aggression. That was essentially my entire point. So if he will admit that I'm right, or in his words, not that wrong, then there's not much else to talk about. But he keeps talking anyway, even after having long since run out of anything relevant to say, as is his custom. He observes that football used to be a lot more violent than it is today. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because I made the exact same point in the very monologue he's attempting to rebut. That's what I said. It's the left-wing media that tried to turn Damar Hamlin into a conversation about football's increasing violence. Remember, a White House reporter asked the president about is football becoming too dangerous? As I said in that segment, football is actually becoming much less dangerous. If there was a time to have a national dialogue about the violence in football, it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Today, it's about as non-violent as it can possibly be while still remaining something resembling the sport as it was originally designed. The Hamlin injury, if it was a football injury, was the result of a routine football play that was by no means especially violent or brutal. There would be no way to take that play out of the game without turning it into two-hand touch or flag football. which is why, once again, it makes no sense to use Damar Hamlin as a jumping off point for a discussion about the violence of the sport. It has nothing to do with the violence of the sport. It was a basic, normal tackle. That's all it was. It was a not especially violent play in a sport that has become less and less violent with each passing year. That was my point. A point that Cenk restates while pretending to rebut. But now it's time for the woman on the panel to chime in, and she's the one, okay, this is where they're setting her up, okay, they're teeing her off, and but this is where the real demolition is going to happen. She's going to set me straight. Let's listen.
Okay, so the crux of his argument is women shouldn't have a say because men are the ones that have violent urges and you chicks don't get it. You chicks don't get the violent urges that we have that we need to get out, which I almost can see, like, I'm a cis woman and I am raising, apparently so far as I know, a cis baby. I've been raising a cis son for 2 years. And there are, like, yeah, I totally get that there are like male things that are ingrained in him. I would actually almost accept that argument from this tool shed if I knew that he had no opinions on abortion, female reproductive rights, the price of tampons, maternity leave. If he shut his stupid bearded pie hole about any of those things that he literally as a man does not understand about being a woman, then I might accept his argument. But I know this bearded douche nozzle has so much to say about women that he knows nothing about. So for him to turn around and be like, women, I don't even want to hear from you because you guys just don't. Shut up. Shut your stupid, dumb pie hole, you dime store Justin Thoreau.
Lady, listen, if you want to be included in the football conversation, you're not helping your case here. You're so emotional, you can barely see straight. Calm down, Cupcake. Take a breath. You're being hysterical. Okay, can you imagine trying to watch a game and this woman comes running in? You're trying to watch the game. Let me tell you about my cis baby. My God, shut up. Now, as to your points, if anything in that rambling, stuttering pile of words can be described as a point, I would say this. First of all, I do not now have, nor have I ever had, an opinion about the price of tampons. I don't even know how much they cost. I couldn't tell you. Is it $3 a tampon? I don't know. 30 cents? I do have an opinion about abortion and other reproductive, quote unquote, reproductive issues, because as a man, I am 50% involved in reproduction. It is as much my issue as it is yours. I was also once an unborn baby. So if you want reproduction to be a woman's issue, you need to figure out a way to reproduce entirely without the involvement of a male member of the species. Until you do that, this is our issue as much as it is yours. So you got to deal with that. And actually, let me clarify that. You have to figure out a way to reproduce without a male member of the species and also to reproduce yourself. Because if you're reproducing and making another person, then already it's not just your issue because there's another person involved. So no matter what, in reproduction, there are other people involved. It's not just you. Second, to clarify, I don't disregard your opinion about football. I don't. I disregard your opinion about everything, including football. Not because you're a woman, but because you use the phrase cis baby. That automatically, I want you to understand this, that automatically invalidates everything you will ever say about anything ever. Not that on this topic you actually have much to say in the first place. You've yet to approach anything that might be called an argument, but still. Everything is out the window now because you talked about your cis baby. But anyway, you know what? We'll listen for another minute to give you one last chance to put together some kind of argument. Let's go.
He's just saying women, are not intelligent enough to understand football? What do you mean they can't understand?
Yeah, there's
it's not that complicated.
There's literally posted rules. Like you can Google the rules of football, and anyone with like a basic level of intelligence cannot. There's literally a list of rules, and go, okay, I understand.
Yeah,
you read the rules, you watch one game, and go, I get it. It's not magic. It's not magic. It's not like, are men not allowed to watch gymnastics or baking or like this is the most sexist, going both ways, sexist argument from the dumbest douche nozzle.
Okay, this is what tells me that not only are you unable to understand football, but apparently you also don't understand English. I didn't say that women can't comprehend the rules of football. I mean, you probably can't, which is why you're sitting there Googling it. What I said quite clearly from the context is that women generally don't understand, don't relate to the desire to watch, much less participate in, violence as entertainment. Males understand violence as entertainment in a way that women don't, just like my wife understands the appeal of Gilmore Girl reruns in a way that I don't. The urge to seek outlets for that sort of physical aggression is something that males experience and relate to much more than females. There are exceptions, but the exceptions are exceptions. That's why we call them exceptions. Is that clear enough for you, or are you still confused? Do I need to speak slower? In conclusion, the Young Turks squad here has spent 10 minutes trying to find a reason to disagree with my point, but sadly, they never found one. All we've really learned here is that they have trouble comprehending simple English sentences, and we've also learned that the woman at the table has a baby who we should all be praying for. And we've learned that all three of them at the table are today canceled. That'll do it for this portion of the show. As we move over to the members block, you can become a member and watch the members block by using code Walsh at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Hope to see you over there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.